coming. Obviously, another important week here as we get ready with Minnesota up on Thursday. You look at their team; they're now fully healthy. They've got Battle back. He was out for a good part of their early preseason, and they're playing really well. They obviously have had a couple close games here of late. Had a chance there at Wisconsin, lost by 3. We obviously know how hard of a place that is to play. So we expect what has become the tale of this Big Ten season for every team in the Big Ten. When you look at the scores, and you got to play well on every given night to give yourselves a chance to win. And if you don't, it's going to be a long night. That's the reality of this league. And we know that'll be the case on Thursday. So as far as Zed's concerned, I spoke about it on the radio show. No updates on Zed outside of he's making regular progress in regards to his shoulder. Sean obviously played yesterday with a bit of an ankle issue that happened in the Purdue game when one of their players came under his foot. And we expect him to kind of continue to progress. Outside of that, I don't really have any injury updates.
You touched on your radio show about how you've dealt with 2-2-1 press, diamond press, man-to-man press. When teams are throwing different presses at you like that, what are some of the keys that you're asking, like Bruce, to be reading? What are the things that guys need to understand better if teams are throwing different looks at you like that? Yeah, I thought, I think Bruce has been. Let me go back to the Rutgers game, Adam. We saw a diamond. We saw a 2-2-1. We saw a three-quarter court. And Bruce was phenomenal at attacking. As a matter of fact, they had to come out of it because of how well we attacked it in the Rutgers game. I mean, we had great success at attacking that. I think, and they're as good at any team at doing it in the league. North Carolina, we struggled in the second half, and obviously late against Purdue. Yesterday, I thought we were fine. I wish we could have. I think we could have been more aggressive with it. But outside of the second half, I thought in Bruce's, a couple plays there. Outside of that, we did a really good job attacking it. Did a good job for the most part getting it beyond the half court. I just think there were a couple more times where we could have attacked that we didn't. I asked you after the game about Bruce and just kind of his last couple of games. His assists and turnovers and things are still about the same as they were prior to the last 2 games. His shooting has gone down the last couple of games. Are teams forcing him into different types of shots, or is he taking different shots, or is he just missing right now?
I don't know. I think we've got to look at it. I don't know that they're forcing him in any different shots, and I don't even know that it's fatigue. I think in a lot of cases, this is what we've talked about, is there are going to be ebbs and flows to our freshmen and how they play. That's just the reality of playing and relying on freshmen. There's going to be some highs and there's going to be some lows, and that's going to be consistent with kind of what I've said from the beginning. And I think Bruce has experienced that. He's got to work through this, and I know he will. He's a phenomenal worker and a terrific kid, and I know he will.
Coach, I know you said on the radio that you don't necessarily attribute some of what went wrong on Sunday to Zed Key not being in the game, but I wonder if you maybe felt his absence a little bit more, especially given that Felix was in foul trouble and where those areas kind of showed.
Yeah, I think where I sensed it the most is when we played a team, and I've competed against Kevin's team a number of times, both at Butler and then last year at Seton Hall. I think when we played against a team like that changes their defenses, and I think the ability to kind of play through him and him to play with his physicality, with his back to the basket and his rebounding certainly would have helped defensively too. We certainly still could have lost with a fully healthy Zed. I don't want to attribute it all to that.
by any stretch, and Maryland deserves credit. But if you said, hey, what are the specific areas, it was the lack of physicality in the paint that he provides. Certainly the offensive and defensive rebounding that I think we missed with him. And just, Zed's ability to get guys in foul trouble because of how physical he is in the low post. We don't have another guy like that. That's not Felix's game right now. He's just a different post player. I think, it's a learning experience for Felix. His last 2 fouls of the first half were, I think, legitimate fouls. His first one, I have some argument about. But he's just got to learn in this particular situation. The last foul, he needed to let go because we needed him in the game.
Yeah, so is that a different conversation you have to have with Felix if he's, the next few games or however long Zed's out about, being more conservative with getting in foul trouble because there's not another, big guy you can put behind him?
Yeah, and in his defense, we didn't put him in great position because we went for a couple shot fakes on his last foul. Our perimeter guys, we just need to be better with that. But it is a conversation we had with him going into the game, and it's a conversation we'll continue to have because his value right now is he needs to be able to give us 20 to 25 good minutes because his size and length is so valuable.
Chris, there's a phrase that you've had several players use over the years. It's win the first 4-minute war. I know EJ used to say it a lot. Years back, Jay Sean used to say it about coming out strong in the first 4 minutes of the second half. With this group, is that still a message that you guys are really putting an emphasis on?
Well, we've obviously got to be better with it. This is now a couple games, the Carolina game and the Maryland game, where we did not perform well in the second half to start. So we've got to be better to start and have a better response. And our older guys on the floor have to lead the way in that situation. Obviously, we had three freshmen in the starting lineup, first and second half. But we've got to be better than that.
It may be beating a dead horse at this point, but in the very beginning of that second half with Bruce in the first few minutes, now that you've had a chance to look at it a little bit, were those couple turnovers Bruce needed to keep his eyes up a little more, where his teammates needed to make themselves more available? Have you been able to look at maybe what went wrong in the first 2 minutes with those few?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it just, he'll get better in those situations. He is better. He's been better in those situations. I point to the Rutgers game where he was phenomenal with it. I think he'll get better. I think we were in good spots, but it's a lot for a young kid, again, to go through that. And I understand why they called the walk. That doesn't get called a lot in that situation. I get it. But he'll be better with that for sure, and we'll find ways to help him.
Hey, Chris, when Felix was out, it seemed like you guys still enjoyed some success offensively with that smaller lineup. Just curious, was that more of a matchup thing that you see that it worked well against Maryland, or going forward, do you think that's a viable option if need be?
Well, keep in mind now they were small too. They were playing a 6'7" backup post as well. So it wasn't like there's a couple times where Gene was playing against a 6'9" guy, but it wasn't that significant. So we were able to. I don't know that was a byproduct of going small as much as it was. We were just in a little bit of a better rhythm offensively. We had some clunky moments offensively for sure, but that's not why we lost the game. It was our defensive effort in the second half.
And then one last moment towards the end of the game, I think it's a little bit overshadowed just by the end result, but Roddy had a couple shots down the stretch that kept you guys alive. What have you seen from his recent improvement offensively?
I think he's just got to keep getting better. I think he's got to hang his hat on coming in and being a defensive-minded perimeter player for us. That's where he's got to really embrace his impact with this group. But Roddy's going to be a really good player. I've said that all along. I know we haven't had a chance to kind of see. We've seen some bits and pieces, but he's a growing young man, and he's going to get better and better, and he's going to be a really good player here.
Chris, how's it going, man? You've talked about this kind of a bigger picture thing last couple of years and just what today's college basketball is.
Yeah.
And totally understandable. I'm sure every coach out there is going to have things with their roster where you're going to have to improve as the year goes along. But when you look and you consider the 4 freshmen that you've got, how they're playing for you, transfers that you found, having a Justice and a Zed, you know what I'm saying? In today's college basketball, could you make a case that that's a that's a pretty good deal, like what you've got going this year?
Yeah, I think, Timmy, the key is going to be, as we've said, is I think your biggest upside as a program is if you can keep talented young players together, for multiple years, and then potentially, if needed, add transfers, or if you have a veteran or two and then add a mix of really nice blend of young, talented freshmen, like I feel like we've been able to add with this class and the upcoming class. I think that gives you and your program the best upside to have some good veteran players along with some good young guys, because I think it really gives you a high ceiling as long as injuries don't play a role as the season progresses. I think the challenge is in moments where there's going to be growing pains, is managing them with the right amount of frustration, anger, whatever you want to call it, and yet understanding that this is all a part of the growth process. It's tricky in college basketball, Timmy, as you know it, because you follow scores in the game, as you guys all do who are in this room. It's just, you look around college basketball right now, and there are really good teams that are 1-4 in league play, and it's just, there is so much parity, and it really is determined by how you play on a given night.
But to Bryce, and maybe more specifically defense, I'm sure when you recruited him, you look at what his strengths are, but you could probably say, that's a 6'6", like 204. You maybe even made a comment about how he was like needing to lose some of that weight at the start of the year, but you could look and see a guy that's got the size to last through a Big Ten season, even as a freshman. But when you maybe highlight some of those plays late in the Maryland game, you probably do as a coach have to say, like, we can't have that, like on some of the blow-bys. How do you get him to go into that reserve tank to become a better defender while keeping up his strengths?
He's got to go through it, and I think he's got to see himself in some ways. You get exposed in practice. It's one thing. If you get exposed in certain situations in games, right? That's for a good player like him and a hungry player to get better. I think that's a real opportunity for growth, and he sees it. He's self-aware enough. He's not a young man who's oblivious to that. He's self-aware. We'll help him with it. We've got to figure out ways to maybe keep teams from attacking him so much, and figure out ways where we can help him. And then he's got to do a better job with technique and attention to detail and not fouling in certain situations. So I think going through that, I think can be the greatest teacher for him. And it's hard to put, I shared this stat on the radio show about, 41% of our minutes were from our freshmen, and 0% of their minutes were from freshmen. And that's by no means an excuse. We need to be better. But the reality is we've got to learn from these experiences these young guys have to.
Building off of, what's that? Go ahead. Okay. Building off of that, you used the phrase in the preseason about normalizing struggle, and you just talked about like with Bryce, like getting exposed in practice differently than getting exposed in a game. What is it like normalizing struggle at this time of year as opposed to maybe like during the preseason when there aren't cameras there? Is that any different as a coach trying to walk these guys through some of those things when it's live game action?
I think it is different. It's different when it's real game. I think all four freshmen have had a level of success, and they've handled that, I think, pretty well. They've also had some struggles, and we'll see how we handle that. But I think it's different when you're out there kind of for everybody to see. And everybody to do whatever they do when teams or kids struggle. That's different. It's when it's behind closed doors, and I think you try to help kids remember that this is really about us growing as a group, us moving forward. That's it. There's no reason to get embarrassed. There's no reason to. This is the normal process. And I think that's all part of it.
I wanted to ask you too about Ice and the last getting him back and how his role maybe seems to be kind of growing again. I mean, I know he had to get his legs back underneath him and things like that, but when you have a guy like that who's so crucial to what you do, and he takes some time away and he comes back, how is his role kind of evolving now that he is back with you guys full time, and what can he give you going forward?
I think he's in a really good mindset right now, just willing to help with whatever role's been asked of him. He's not really requested anything other than, coach, whatever you need me to do. Isaac wants to be a college coach. He understands kind of what that looks like, and I think he's in a place where he's like, whatever is needed, whether it's another ball handler or defensive-minded guy, I'm ready to go for that.
In the second half, I think there's a 4 or 5 minute stretch where you had Isaac, you had Tanner, Roddy, Gino on the floor. Obviously, it might not be your ideal offensive lineup, but it looked like they were bringing a lot of energy on defense and getting consecutive stops, which you guys needed. In the moment, when you're still down by several points, what's the decision-making like of how long do you run with that lineup that's getting stops while you have maybe Justice and Bryce on the bench? You kind of give up this for that, but those guys are getting stops.
Yeah, we went stretches there where we couldn't stop them. We couldn't keep the ball out of the paint. We were not defending with the amount of detail or effort that we needed to. I think that group provided some life and some energy to us. It's a balance right now for us as a group because we do need to have an offensive group out there at times, or at least a blend. But that group was providing some energy to us defensively that we needed, and then we were able to add an offensive guy or two to complement that to, I think, get it to a possession game. But just collectively, we need to be better. We obviously need to simplify things a little bit for this group that's playing without Zed, and that's what we'll try to do in the coming days and preparing for this week.